Hi. So, a little about me. I'm a caretaker. Anyone else fall into that role? A little round of applause, yeah? Great fun, huh? I personally am not a general average, run of the mill type caretaker. I am the super duper kind. I began to develop my caretaking skills as a child. And eventually, I developed it into a full career. I started as a special education teacher and working with kids with behavioral problems. After a few years, I felt I needed to do more to help kids with these types of issues. So in 1988, I completed a master's degree in social work. Of course, a paid career wasn't enough for the super duper deluxe caretaker I am. So I found a number of volunteer roles to fulfill this life mission, in addition to taking care of friends and family. I thought today I would share one of the most profound experiences I had as a super duper deluxe times three caretaker. The date is September 11th, 2001. I'm driving in my car down Route 146 towards Worcester, Mass. On the radio, they're talking about a plane hitting the trade towers, and I thought it was like a story, like War of the Worlds with H.G. Wells. Then they started freaking out about some other plane crashes, and then another plane hits the second tower. I'm thinking, this is not very funny. The way the brain rationalizes to make sense of the incomprehensible is amazing. Anyway, at some point it hits me. This is not a joke. Over the next few days, I'm glued to the TV. As I watched, all I could think about was the people who were left behind, the ones who had friends and families in the tower, the ones who were also watching in horror as the crashes and the collapses played over and over on our TV screens. I remember feeling shocked, watching in horror as people jumped out windows. I felt powerless, but also felt driven to find a way to do something, anything. I needed to help somehow. The Red Cross was asking for volunteers, and I called to see what I could do to help. As an experienced social worker, I was able to get on a mental health team. This disaster was going to need support for months. We were fast tracked through training, and I volunteered in the offices during the day. Fast tracked means I was able to take about 10 classes over the course of a couple weeks rather than taking months. By November, we were getting ready to deploy to New York. I think, great, super duper deluxe times three, ultra caretaker is off to help. Then on November 12th, American Airlines Flight 587 crashed at 9:16 a.m., 2 minutes after takeoff. The plane was on its way to the Dominican Republic and crashed into a Queens neighborhood. All 260 people on the plane died, plus 5 people who were on the ground. The state of New York was putting together a memorial service for the surviving families. I lost my place, sorry. And I was diverted to this disaster. I boarded a plane in Rhode Island, arrived in New York, and was put on a team with 10 other mental health workers. We eventually named our little group the DRAT Pack, Disaster Response Action Team. Our first day, we were sent to Queens. Our job, canvassed the neighborhood where the plane crashed. We went door to door with a partner, offering to support residents. I learned that this neighborhood was composed of families of many of the firefighters who were lost in the towers. There were 111 children who were left without a parent in this neighborhood. I heard stories of adults and children headed out to work or school, standing outside watching as the jet headed directly for them. The fear, thinking they were under attack again. The terror as the plane headed directly for them and veered at the last second to hit instead the house of a well-known, well-loved family, pillars of the community. I saw the remains of their house, a chimney and a front steps leading to nowhere. The burned out cars in the streets with their tires melted to the asphalt. I felt the grief of the losses so many of them experienced individually and as a community. I was welcomed into the home of strangers and left these homes in the neighborhood with hugs, tears, and a deep sense of connection and awe at the resilience. We gave our co-responders support, and from the intensity of this experience, the DRAP pack was formed. The next day was the memorial service. Many of the passengers lost in the crash were from the Bronx. My team and I took the subway to the Bronx and assisted in loading families on the buses, then headed to Long Island for the service. A mental health worker, a chaplain, and a nurse were assigned to each bus. My bus did not have a chaplain, and neither myself nor the nurse spoke Spanish. My bus was composed of 5 different families who were all immediate family members to somebody who was lost, so a parent. I remember I needed to give some information to the folks on my bus. I wasn't sure if they all spoke or understood English. Being a bit flustered at having to speak, I asked if someone didn't understand English to raise their hands. Duh. I immediately realized the foolishness of my question and got a volunteer to translate for me. First stop, Long Island, a memorial service. Families were ushered off the bus to an outdoor seating area with a long line of porta potties. Politicians and chaplains spoke, families cried. Some screamed and wailed, flailing their arms and bodies, throwing themselves down while sobbing. Staff would run over to assist, chairs being knocked over in the process. Having been raised as an uptight wasp, this physical display of grief was much different than the stoic face we put on grief. When the service was over, we were herded back to our assigned bus and provided with plastic containers containing lunches. The next stop, the site of the crash in Queens. We sat in lines in the parking lot and on the road to the site, on the buses for several hours with no bathrooms. People had to get out of the bus and pee in the parking lot. We were afraid to use the porta potties because the bus could leave at any second and then you'd be left there. Family members would hold up coats around them for privacy. Some used empty containers from lunch to pee while on the bus. In the meantime, families cried and supported one another. I worked extensively with one family who lost their mother in the crash. I spoke at length with her teenage daughter who was experiencing severe guilt over the arguments she had had with her mother in recent months, and even on the day she left. Her mother's remains had not yet been identified. Many had yet to be identified in the ash and dust. When we finally arrived at the site, it was dark. It was a logistical nightmare. Blazing spotlights lit the area, and a cordoned-off path created a loop for families to follow through the crash site. There was nothing here but piles of dirt, as most of the debris had been cleared away. My teenager clings to me as we walk. In her mind, her mother's still here in the dust. My arm around her waist, she leans into me. She spins and sobs on my shoulder, shaking. Her sister encircles her with her arms from behind. Her knees weaken and I hold her tighter, keeping her upright. Over her shoulder, I see a woman in a government uniform walking towards us. Catching my eye, she says, "Keep moving." The incredulity must have shown on my face because now she threatens to get an ambulance to take my team away. Really? I can't believe it. I yell at the woman, "Leave us the fuck alone," and add, "This girl's mother just died, right where we're standing." Unfucking believable. We come out of the loop and head back to the bus. I realize something absolutely stunning is happening. Just thinking about this still gives me goosebumps. The families in the neighborhood, the ones who had just lost so many of their own, were outside, lining the sidewalks. Many of them opened their homes to provide bathrooms. Some set up little tables or were carrying baskets. They handed out water and food and love. And after a day of chaos, this human reaching out to human leaves me in awe. This is who we are as humans, this shared experience of grief and love and resilience. We eventually make our way back to the Bronx, and the Drat Pack headed to the subway to return to our hotels. We had had our Red Cross vest on, which normally we would not do, but in our exhaustion, we didn't even think about it. Back in the city, we were verbally accosted by somebody, berating and swearing at us for being Red Cross workers and not helping them enough and stealing money that was donated. This was such a stark contrast to what I had experienced all day. I kept my head down, walked on, making a beeline to my hotel in the sanctuary of my room. It was suddenly all too much. When I get to my room, I leave the lights off, strip off my clothes, and take an actual bath in a tiny hotel tub. My whole being was just overwhelmed and overstimulated. Frustrated by the tiny tub and not being able to submerge, I get out and sit on my bed naked in the dark and cry. My thoughts eventually shift. Tomorrow, this super duper deluxe times 3 ultra fantastic caretaker extraordinaire is heading to the 9/11 response to do it again. Thank you.